Gary DePaul with Unlabeled Leadership. Welcome to Episode 8, Ronald Graves differentiates the coaching role. It's time to demystify what coaching means. So, let's get started. Even though Ronald has spent most of his career in risk management, I know him because of his expertise in performance improvement and in coaching. In fact, for the past year, he's been coaching me. I think I can attest to his coaching abilities. In 2020, during the pandemic, I wrote a book on leadership and I started this podcast. So I've accomplished a lot, and Ronald has been a big part of that. Because of my coaching experience or my experience being coached, I have a good idea what coaching is and what it isn't. And that's why I decided to invite Ronald to come on the show to talk about coaching, because coaching is such a unique way of improving performance. If you're in a management role with several people reporting to you, I highly recommend getting a coach. With direct and indirect reports, you have a responsibility. I actually would say you have an obligation to do the best you can in serving them. And being coached is a way to ensure that you're doing the best you can for your people. Part 1, coaching does not pour information into you. If you're in management, you can really enhance your role by learning a little bit about coaching. And that's why I invited Ronald here to talk about what coaching is and what it isn't. Unless you're a coach or you're being coached or you study coaching, you may not know exactly what coaching is. In fact, I think most people have a popular concept for what's involved in coaching. To demystify the coaching concept, I asked Ronald to explain to me what coaching is not. Here's Ronald.
Most people think that anyone, and I mean anyone, who provides information to someone else is coaching them.
Okay.
But the term coach is getting confused with numerous other business professionals who are all important, but they're not coaches. Even if, in regular talking, that's how they refer to themselves. Let me give you some examples. Someone who pours vast amounts of knowledge into you to increase your intelligence, that's a teacher, not a coach. When they're in the classroom, they are teaching, not coaching. Another example, someone who pours vast amounts of knowledge into you to increase your skills, that is a trainer, not a coach. When they speak to you, they're training or possibly instructing, but they're not coaching.
Okay.
Now, someone who provides unique assistance or advice to you or to your organization from their expertise, that's a consultant, not a coach. When they're working with you, they are consulting. They are not coaching.
A manager might think of as being a coach. That manager is actually a teacher, a trainer, and a consultant in those three roles, but not coaching if that's the limit of what the person does.
Yeah, definitely. And even managers. A manager, I kind of define a manager as someone who helps you complete your assigned work. But a manager, when they oversee your work, they're managing, they're not coaching. So even that manager may think they're coaching when in fact they're really managing.
Gotcha.
Another example, for instance, someone who takes you along with them on the road to success is one of my favorite definitions of a leader, but that's not a coach. When you follow that individual, they're leading you, they're not coaching you.
Okay.
Even though a leader can use coaching strategies, as I'll point out later on, when they are leading you, they're not coaching you. The last example here is someone who provides wisdom and guidance based on their vast experience is a mentor, not a coach. When they give you great advice, and they will, because that's what they do when they mentor, they're actually mentoring, not coaching. And I think this one here, mentoring and coaching, the difference between the two is really a fine line. And as I'll explain to you here in a second, most people don't understand. They kind of just blend the two together.
I think the popular definition kind of revolves around this mentoring where someone is giving advice. Like you're saying, that's not coaching.
Yeah. The examples I just gave you, all those people have one common thread. They're all pouring information into you. All right. Okay. And I know that because, I've served in every one of those roles throughout my lifetime, and I enjoyed all of them. But when I was doing those, I wasn't coaching. At least I thought I was coaching, but I realized later on that I wasn't. That's perfectly okay, because all of these disciplines I just mentioned are very important, because we all need as much information and knowledge as we can absorb. I think you would agree with me. We always should be in learning mode, because that's how we grow. To answer your question, the activities and the interactions I just described, which people often refer to as coaching, whether it's people who are using these people or the people themselves, they're not really coaching.
Part 2, inside out rather than outside in. Okay, Ronald's clarified that coaching is not teaching, training, consulting, leading, or mentoring. It's none of those things. So what the heck is coaching? And what the heck is the purpose of doing coaching in the first place? I thought that would be a good place to start, and that's what I asked Ronald to do, explain what the purpose is, and then what is coaching. Again, here's Ronald.
I'm going to start by saying that each of you who's listening to this podcast right now, your greatness, your potential, the very best version of you is not out there in the external world. It's in your internal world. And it must be drawn from the inside out, not brought from the outside in. Now, all those other disciplines I described earlier are very important, but they cannot tap into your greatness. All they can do is increase your intellect. So this is where the coach comes in. A coach takes you deep inside yourself to bring your greatness out from within. So how do we do this? Well, we do this by asking those all-important questions that help you increase your self-awareness. You see, when you go deep inside yourself, you'll find a new level of awareness. You'll discover things about yourself that you were totally unaware of. There is a level of intelligence deep within your subconscious. Now, this can also be referred to as your unconscious, but that intelligence is much greater than your intellect. It knows the answers, the very best answers, but you just need someone to help you become consciously aware of it.
Giving advice, that doesn't tap into your potential and that internal part of you. It's just giving you advice and information. You don't necessarily process it the same way than what you're talking about now.
Yes, exactly. It increases your intellect. I mean, you learn more, you get smarter, you understand more, but it doesn't tap into that greatness, that potential you have that's hidden deep within.
Okay.
Let me give you a little example here. Business as usual for you and me and most professional individuals involves activity.
Yeah.
A lot of it. We love being busy. Busy to most professionals equals success. But if you study business as usual for the uber successful professionals, I mean the best of the best, the ones that are the top 1%, it involves thinking and getting better at thinking. These individuals have discovered it's the quality of their thoughts that directly influence their success, that has the greatest impact on their success. So instead of out there learning and gaining knowledge, they're focusing on their thinking and how they can think better into their challenges and their success.
Now that's interesting, because someone in a company, say a corporation, who is being paid to do activity may have the assumption that that person is not being paid to reflect, to think. Rather, they're being paid to do activity. So there might be some biases that makes people resistant from doing this process of looking internally and trying to tap into that part of you.
Leaders are the visionaries. They've got to kind of like chart the course and all that, and that takes thinking. If you've got a leader who spends a lot of time in being busy, they're kind of not focusing on their leadership, because the leader's a visionary. The leader's a person who's got to find the course that everybody else needs to follow. So that takes a lot of thought. So hopefully a leader gets into that kind of a mindset. Leaders, like I say, these uber successful individuals, they realize the secret to their success is greater awareness, because greater awareness will get a better course for your company. They can't improve on something they're not aware of. That's why
Yes.
taking you inside, and neither can you, neither can our listeners. If you're not aware of something, there's no way you can improve it. Coaching
Well,
basically takes you into that awareness so that you can improve yourself. And the more you improve yourself, the more you can improve your leadership.
yeah, I was going to say, and that's where coaching comes into play.
Yes. With a coach, when you increase your self-awareness with a coach, you become that person that is fully capable of achieving your dreams, your aspirations, all of that. And you were also able to solve that insurmountable challenge and that big mountain that's staring you right in the face. That thing that you just can't get past and going, I'm stuck. Well, all the information in the world from the outside won't help you get unstuck. It's got to come from within. That's where that creative answer lies. The short answer to your question you just asked me,
Mm-hmm.
a coach is that one unique individual who does not help you learn more, they help you become more.
And they do this as a guide?
They do this as a partner, basically.
Ah,
Partner with you and helping you improve yourself. But the coach is focused on one thing, you. The coaching process is all about the person being coached. It's not about the coach. When the coach comes into the coaching session, the ego's left behind. It doesn't matter how great a coach they are. It only matters about how effective they are in helping that individual gain more understanding and gain greater awareness.
okay. That's what coaching is. What I want to know now is how coaching is different from leadership and mentorship. Just a quick note though, when I say leadership in this case, I'm referring to more the traditional sense of leadership. If you go back to the second podcast, I explained the difference between management and leadership. So when I asked Ronald about leadership, I was thinking more of the popular concept of what leadership is. Here's Ronald talking about leadership and mentorship.
Gary, if it's okay with you, I'm going to break these out separately and use examples to try to describe this concept.
Okay.
I'll start with leadership. Let's say I'm a leader. I'm a leader in a manufacturing company with multiple cells or pods or assembly lines, whatever you want to call them. Now, earlier I said that a leader is someone who takes others along with them on the road to success. So in this case, I've cast the vision for the company. I've charted the course. I'm the one everybody looks up to. All of my followers have 3 questions of me as their leader. Anybody's followers have these same 3 questions of them. Number 1, do you care about me? Number 2, can you help me? And number 3, can I trust you? So as a leader, I've reached a level where my people can answer all 3 of these questions with the answer yes, okay?
Okay.
The most effective leaders lead by walking around. So let's say I'm walking around through the plant today. I notice that Joe's over there and he seems to be struggling with his work. I walk over, I pick up a couple of his finished products, examine them and go, you know something? These are not as good as they should be. So I stand there and watch Joe for a few minutes, and I notice that he's performing one step differently than the instruction manual indicates. I walk up to him and I say, hey, Joe, you're doing it all wrong, man. Don't you remember last week's training? Here, let me show you. When you get to this step, do it this way. See what I'm doing? Uh-huh. You understand? Great.
So Joe's getting corrective feedback.
Joe, I'm showing Joe exactly how to do it right. Yes,
Okay.
corrective feedback, you could say. Now I'm all done with this, and Joe kind of figures out what I'm doing, so I'm going to say, all right, Joe, now you try it while I watch you. So I watch Joe for a little while, and he's got it down pretty good. I say, all right, now you got it. Can I count on you to do it this way every time from now on? Great. I'm depending on you. Okay, so now I've had this little interaction with Joe, and I walk away, and I say to myself, that was a great job of coaching.
But no.
So let me ask you and your listeners, how do you think Joe feels? What do you think he's saying to himself right now? Does he feel really good about himself? Or does he feel really crappy?
Could be, man, I just screwed up, and
Yeah,
could be pretty negative.
it usually is pretty negative, actually. What I did was not really coaching. In fact, it wasn't even leading. It was some kind of a strange combination of managing and training, all kind of rolled up into one. But let me try another approach and show you how coaching differs from that.
Okay.
Instead of telling Joe that he's doing it all wrong, what if I walk up to him and I say something like this? Hi, Joe, how you doing? I like the way you're doing steps 1 through 8. You're doing a great job. But can you explain to me the way you're doing step number 9? Okay.
And then Joe starts explaining.
Yeah. I go, okay, I understand. Okay, do me a favor. Look at the instruction manual that's right there beside you and tell me what that recommends for step number 9. So Joe looks up in the manual, opens the page and goes, yeah. I say, you see the difference? Yeah, Joe sees the difference. So I ask him, if you were to do it that way, do you think it might improve your speed and maybe even your quality? What do you think? He says, yeah. So I said, okay, so give it a try. I'll be back in a little while and get your feedback, okay? Okay. How do you think Joe feels now?
Yeah, compared to the first version, a lot better. And, it's not punitive.
No. What I've tried to do is empower him, give him a little bit of self-confidence. Remember, first of all, he was just complimented by me as his leader for steps 1 through 8. And I just gave him praise. Plus, I actually left him in control of step 9. Rather than taking control away from him, I put him in control because I said, do you think? And he agreed. Yeah, I think so. So it's kind of his idea. He's the one who agreed out loud that there might be a better way. That's coaching. I have helped him find a better way that he believes he actually took control of.
And that goes back to your earlier point that the coaching is a partnership. But it's all about the other person and helping that other person internalize what's going on. So it's giving up control of the interaction in the relationship.
It's kind of giving up control of the outcome because I kind of leave it up to him in a way. Now he's going to do it kind of the way I sort of led him to, but yet he knows what's in the book. I mean, he probably forgot it because the training was just last week. So he knows that he can take ownership of that step now. And he knows that he did great on 1 through 8. So, hey, he's feeling pretty good about himself. Let me go on to mentorship now and then give you an example of that one too.
Yeah.
Let's say I've got a lady by the name of Jane. She's one of the stars on my team. And I've been pouring myself into her to help her move up in the company. And one day she comes to me with a problem. Now, I'm her mentor. I've just tried to share everything I know with her. When she comes to me with this problem, I know the answer. But I have a couple ways I can do this. As her mentor, I can give her my answer, and she thanks me, and off she goes. This requires, very little time on my part, and I feel like a proud mentor. Right? That's the mentor's approach to it. Or I can choose to go into coaching mode and start asking her questions. My 2 favorite opening questions when she comes in are, number 1, what do you think you should do? And number 2, if you were me, what would you tell you to do? I can choose either one of these questions. It doesn't matter which one I choose. We'll get to the same outcome.
In this case, instead of telling the person, here's what you do, you're actually communicating, you need to struggle with this. You need to look inside because I think there's something there where you can answer some of this or came to talk with.
Well, as a coach, I believe strongly that the answers to everybody's challenges lies within them, the best answers. So I'm trying to help her find that best answer for herself. I'll help her with it. But once I ask her that first question, it's going to require her to think. Okay. So once she starts thinking through her answers, as she starts communicating with me, I can start asking follow-up questions. I stay in question mode. I keep questioning her. And I try to stay out of answer mode as long as I possibly can. There may be a point at which I've got to, give her some information, but I try to stay in the question mode as long as I possibly can. Now I can ask any question I want, but I must avoid one word. That word is why. Do not ask a question with the word why in it. Why? Because as soon as I use the word why, I put Jane on the defensive. And this great dialogue that we've started developing here is going to just stop right then.
You won't shut down Jane.
I shut her down, yeah. The opposite of empower, I just sort of shut her down. So I had those two different scenarios. I gave you the mentorship scenario, I gave you the coaching scenario. So if I go into mentorship and I choose to give Jane the answer, guess what's going to happen? She'll come to me for every little issue she has, I'm going to have less time to do my own job because I'm going to be too busy solving her problem. And as a leader, I'm not paid to solve her problems. I'm paid to help her solve her problem. However, if I choose to coach Jane to help her find the answers herself, guess what's going to happen? The next time, she'll think twice before coming in my office because she knows what I'm going to do. I'm going to start asking questions. And if I coach her well, she'll take care of all the small stuff on her own. Won't even bother me with it. I've just empowered her with the small stuff, all right, because she's not going to bring it to her. But When she has the big stuff that she kind of needs my guidance with, she's going to wait until she has answers because she knows what I'm going to ask her. So before she comes to my office, she's going to prepare the answers to my question. So she'll already pretty much have the answer before she comes in. She just needs me to help her guide her through it.
Yeah, that makes sense. If someone, for example, or Jane, for this example, was considering shifting to a different role, but there's all this stuff weighing on her mind, pros and cons, and questioning herself. So that sounds like a good opportunity of when you can use coaching in an effective way.
Yeah, I'm mentoring her to move up in the company, but if I keep mentoring her and I keep doing all the work for her, when she goes into that role, she doesn't have me to depend on anymore. It's like she can't break the umbilical cord. Huh? I'm her lifeline. But if I coach her and break that lifeline, then she's fully empowered to take it on herself and start leading others as well as leading herself.
Part 3, asking questions and listening at 5 levels. In my book, 9 Practices of 21st Century Leadership, I have a chapter dedicated to communication. The chapter is called Facing the Unknown Like Lions. In the chapter, I talk about something called the 5 levels of listening, and I got these 5 levels from Ronald, and I didn't know this would come up in conversation. When I asked Ronald what advice he would have for managers to better use coaching in their practice, here's what he had to say.
Coaching involves really 2 things.
Okay.
1, asking questions, and 2, listening. Now, I've already in this podcast pretty well covered the asking questions part. I think I've got that pretty well tied down to you, but I haven't talked about listening yet. Everybody, and I do mean everybody, thinks they're a good listener. I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who doesn't, that I've said, are you a good listener? They would say yes. You know, there's a big difference between hearing and listening. Most of us are good hearers, but when it comes to listening, maybe not so good. I subscribe to the principle that there are 5 levels of listening. I believe we are all masters at levels 1 through 3. We can all do that really well. So let me explain. The first level is pretend listening. In other words, we give the impression we're listening, but our mind is way off somewhere else, and we have absolutely no interest in what that other person is saying.
We're just going through the motions, and I bet that other person picks up on it.
We probably don't realize they pick up on it because we're trying to fake our way through it, but I guarantee you they probably are picking up on that and kind of feeling like it's time to end their conversation.
Yep.
Level 2 is selective listening. Everything is processed through our filtering system. We hear only what we want to hear, and everything else is blocked out by our filters. I think we all can say that, we do a little bit of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things I don't want to hear, so I can block them out if I want to. Level 3 is passive listening. And I know we practice this all the time. We're hearing everything that's being said, but actually we're focusing on figuring out what we're going to say next. Not only that, we're looking for just the slightest little opening so we can interrupt and we can start talking.
Okay, you just described about half my conversations.
Yep.
That's the thing, is that while you're communicating or the other person is communicating, you're processing things faster than they can say it. And there's a tendency to want to jump ahead and say, well, what do I want to input into the conversation? You're missing some of what the other person's trying to communicate.
When you're in coaching mode, I'm coaching someone. One of the biggest things that we have to avoid in coaching is interrupting people. If I ask one of my coaching clients a question, it's my responsibility as a coach to not interject. Absolutely nothing, to not even interrupt at all as long as that person is talking. Only when they're finished talking is when I talk. It takes a lot of work to train yourself not to interrupt people, especially if they're going really slow and you want to speed them along. In coaching, you can't do that. The only time you can actually interrupt is if they take way off on some kind of a tangent and you got to bring them back onto the topic. But other than that, you don't interrupt them. Well, the other things you do in coaching is when you ask them that question, go back to the example I gave you a little bit ago when I asked Jane the question, if it takes her a few seconds to come up with the answer, I don't say anything. If it takes her 60 seconds to come up with the answer, I don't say anything. Because the longer it takes her to answer my question, the deeper she's thinking. And I don't want to interrupt that deep thought process that she's got going. It can be very uncomfortable when you're coaching people. When you're a leader and you ask those questions to people and they kind of just sit there and got this little blank stare for a few seconds. Let them have that blank stare.
Yeah, even people in regular conversations, when you're not doing coaching, that silence is awkward and uncomfortable just by its nature.
Very, very awkward. It feels very uncomfortable, but you got to let it happen. What you'll notice when you ask that question, if their eyes go up, they start looking up and don't say anything, they're thinking very deep for the answer. If you allow the awkwardness to continue when they do start speaking, that awkwardness you'll forget about that awkwardness right away, because what they're going to say, what they'll say to you is going to be so enlightening and so powerful that it'll wipe away any stigma you might have had about that awkwardness.
Well, that gets me through level 3. There's 2 more levels.
Yeah. Now we're going to do the good stuff.
Yeah, the good I'm ready. Hit me.
All right. Level 4, attentive listening. We are focusing on the other person and we're focusing on what they're saying, but we're listening from our own vantage point. We're hearing all the words and their meaning, but little else. We're giving the speaker our time and our attention, which is good, but we're limiting our emotional involvement in conversation. So those of you out there who say, I'm pretty good at level 4, I do that, that's a compliment. Level 4 is a very good place to get to, but there's another level, and that's level 5. Level 5 is called empathic listening. That's the pinnacle. This is similar to level 4, but with a completely different mindset. You listen to the conversation from the speaker's viewpoint, not your viewpoint. You empathize with what the speaker is saying, not only what they're saying, but what they're feeling. You empathize with their words, you empathize with their feelings. Transpose yourself into their world so you can more fully understand the meaning behind what they're saying, the words. And when you do that, another thing happens. You also hear what's not being said, what's known as the unspoken. So you kind of get a feeling for the stuff that they're really not talking about. That is a very difficult level to get to, but once you master it, once you get to that level 5, a whole new world of understanding opens up. You can create amazing amount of trust with the person you're communicating with, and you can build some incredible relationships, all listening at that level 5, when you listen from their perspective, not yours, and you hear what they're saying. You catch the emotion behind it. You feel the emotion behind it.
Also, with empathic listening, what you say is going to be much different than, say, with passive listening or even attentive listening. A lot of what you'll do is inquire to better understand what the person is talking about so you can empathize with what the person's expressing.
Definitely. In a lot of cases, if you're really empathizing with them and feeling that, their mirror neuron fires up and they start being more interested in you, and you're making them feel so good, they want to return that favor and get to know you better too. It creates a really strong, powerful, not only conversation, but it's the building block of a great relationship.
Thank you, Ronald Graves, for being the guest. And if you want to learn more about Ronald, go to the show notes for links. If you have any questions or comments about the show, go to unlabelleadership.com and find the message icon. Click it, and you can leave up to a 1-minute message. I might play it on the air. Thank you for your support for the show, and thank you for listening. Until next time, lead on.